The Simón Bolívar Bridge is a border control point between Venezuela and Colombia. An estimated 50 to 60,000 people cross this part of the border every day. But it wasn't always that many.
Venezuela, the world's worst performing economy,
does not have enough food to feed its 30 million residents.
Venezuela's once thriving middle class is now trapped in desperation.
The economic crisis in Venezuela has led to severe inflation and food and medicine shortages. Aid agencies report that child malnutrition has reached 13% in some parts of the country, up from just 3% a year ago. The number of daily crossers into the city of Cúcuta, the city just over the border on the Colombian side, has nearly tripled in the last 3 years. Many are crossing as a means of survival.
I travelled for 13 hours on a bumpy road. I came here to buy basic supplies because in my country we're facing these shortages.
In the streets, people are dying because they can't find medicine, they're dying because they can't find food. They're dying for all of this, and it's really sad.
In addition to coming to buy food and medicine, many come to visit the University Hospital Erasmo Mayos. It's Cúcuta's only public hospital.
My son has a tumour in his liver, and so in Venezuela they'll see him, but for the chemotherapy, if we have to do chemo, I have to buy it, and I don't have the money. And over there you can't find it. Even when they did the biopsy and he needed antibiotics, I looked and looked and I couldn't find any. Imagine, 300 pharmacies and you can't find any antibiotics.
Yoleda's son Jamie had a bad infection and needed surgery and medicines they also couldn't find in Venezuela.
I came here to Cúcuta because in Venezuela they told me they were going to amputate his feet. I arrived here and thank God, here they saved his feet. He's doing much better.
In the first half of this year, the hospital has already served nearly 2,000 Venezuelans. That's twice as many as this time last year. The director of the hospital worries what will happen if the numbers continue to go up.
Our standard capacity in emergency services is 95 patients, but there are times when we have 130 or 140. This creates a trauma in our delivery of care, because we can't treat 140 patients with the same quality as 95.
Public hospitals in Colombia treat medical emergencies, regardless of the patient's nationality. If the patient is unable to pay, it's free. To cover the extra costs, the national government recently gave roughly $100,000 to Norte de Santander, the state where Cúcuta is located.
And even that amount won't be enough, because most of the people that are coming from Venezuela are high-cost patients. They have serious illnesses. The director of the university hospital, Erasmo Mayos, calculated that on average, each person costs over $300.
And it's not just Venezuelans who are pouring over the border into Cúcuta and putting new pressures on the social services. There are roughly 5 million Colombians currently living in Venezuela, many who migrated to escape Colombia's 5-decade-long internal conflict. But with the challenges in Venezuela now, some Colombians are being deported back to Colombia and many others are choosing to come back. The nonprofit organization, the Center for Migration, offers short-term shelter and food to all kinds of migrants arriving in Cúcuta.
In 2016, the number of deported Colombians that we served here went significantly down from the year before. But two new categories have appeared that have complicated the situation. On one hand, Colombians returning voluntarily. This category has gone up. And even more, the category of economic migrants, Venezuelans leaving their country to come here. This had never happened before.
Diana is Colombian, but her son was born in Venezuela. After 15 years there, Diana moved back to Colombia last week so that her son could be treated for a chronic heart condition. But since he's a Venezuelan citizen, it's not so simple.
The only way they can see him is if he's doing really badly, and they can admit him into emergency services. The other is they could do a consultation, but he would have to have Colombian nationality. Otherwise, I have to pay for the consultation, which costs $15, which I don't have.
The Colombian government passed a decree in order to expedite the registration of children of returning Colombians. This means Diana's son will likely be able to access the public health system within a few weeks. Jose, on the other hand, is a Venezuelan political refugee. He's frustrated because he's in pain after getting in an accident, But the public hospital says they can't operate for free because it's not an emergency.
All I care about is the operation. After that, I can do everything on my own. I'm applying for residency here, but they told me the application will take 7 to 8 months before I know if I'll get it or not.
And there are a lot of Venezuelans like Jose who are crossing the border not just to buy food or visit the hospital, but to stay.
The number of people moving to the country formally has doubled in the last 2 years, from 20,000 to more than 40,000. But there's also informal migration, which we calculate was 150 to 200,000 people last year.
Many migrants do not apply for visas precisely because the process takes so long. But if they're in the country illegally, they can't access social services that many of them need, especially after months of limited access to food and medicine. The border secretary for the state recently proposed a solution to the national government.
I've suggested we give them documentation, a way to stay legally for the first year while they go through the application process. Because right now we have them in the country, but we can't give them healthcare or education. We give them healthcare, but only in emergencies, and since they're not registered in the country, they're not allowed to work here.
Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the political and economic situation continues to worsen. The director of health for Norte de Santander says they would not be prepared if there was a sudden influx of arrivals needing urgent care.
If there's suddenly a massive migration of 30,000 people, the health system will collapse. I have no doubt about that.
With the second highest unemployment rate in all of Colombia, Cúcuta already had high demands on its social services. Now the public hospitals and NGOs are really struggling to keep up while they try to help their neighbors in need. And yet thousands more arrive every day, by force, by necessity, or simply looking for a more stable life. Katie Vogue for City News International.